laying its arbitrary imprint upon events. He is always the crowned agent of the privileged classes which are forming society in their own image. When these classes have not yet fulfilled their mission, then the monarchy is strong and self confident. Then it has in its hands a reliable apparatus power and an unlimited choice of executives because the more gifted people have not yet gone over into the hostile camp. Then the monarch, either personally or through the mediation of a powerful favorite, may become the agent of a great and progressive historic task. It is quite otherwise than the sun of the old society is finally declining to the west. The privileged classes are now changed from organizers of the national life into a parasitic growth, having lost their guiding function. They lose the consciousness of their mission and all confidence in their powers. Their dissatisfaction with themselves becomes a dissatisfaction with the monarchy. The dynasty becomes isolated. The circle of people loyal to the dead narrows down. Their level sinks lower. Meanwhile, the danger grows. New forces are pushing up. The monarchy loses its capacity for any kind of creative initiative. It defends itself. It strikes back. It retreats. Its activities acquire the automatism of mere reflexes. The ascetic despotism of the Romanists did not escape this fate. If you take the Tsarism in its agony in a vertical section, so to speak, Nicholas is the axis of a clique which has its roots the hopelessly condemned past. In a horizontal section of the historic monarchy, Nicholas is the last link in a dynamic chain. His nearest ancestors, who also in their day were merged in family, east and bureaucratic collectivity, only a brother one tried out various measures of and methods of government or government order to protect the old social regime against the fate advancing upon it, but nevertheless they passed it on to Nicholas a chaotic empire already carrying the matured revolution in its womb. If he had any choice left, it was only between different roads to ruin. Liberalism was dreaming of a monarchy on the British plan, but was parliamentarism born on the themes of by peaceful evolution? Was it the fruit of the free foresight of a single monarch? No, it was deposited as a result of a struggle that lasted for ages, and in which one of the kings left his head at the crossroads. The historic psychological contrast mentioned above between the Romanovs and the Capets can, by the way, be aptly extended to the British royal pair of the epoch of the First Revolution. Charles IV revealed fundamentally the same combination of traits with which memorists and historians have endowed Louis XVI and Nicholas II. Charles therefore remained passive, writes Montaigne, yielded where he could not resist, betrayed how unwillingly he did so, and repeat no popularity, no confidence. He was not a stupid man, says another historian of Charles Stuart, but he lacked firmness of character. His evil fate was his wife, Henrietta, a French woman, sister of Louis XIII, saturated even more than Charles with the idea of absolutism. We will not detail the characteristics of the third chronologically first loyal pair to be crushed by a national revolution. We will merely observe that in England the hatred was concentrated above all on the Queen, as a French woman and a papist, whom they accused of plotting with Rome, secret connections with the Irish rebels, and intrigues at the French court. But England had, at any rate, ages at her disposal. She was the pioneer of bourgeoisie civilization. She was not under the yoke of other nations, but on the contrary held them more and more under her yoke. She exploited the whole world. This softened the inner contradictions, accumulated conservatism, promoted an abundance and stability of fatty deposits in the form of a parasitic caste, caste, in the form of a squirity, a monarchy, House of Lords, and the state church. Thanks to this exclusive historic privilege of development possessed by bourgeois England, conservatism combined with elasticity passed over from her institutions into her moral fiber. Various continental Philistines, like the Russian professor Milyukov or the Austro-Marxist Otto Bauer, have not to this day ceased going into ecstasies over this fact. But exactly at the present moment, when England had hard pressed throughout the world, is squandering the last resources of her former privileged position. Her conservatism is losing its elasticity, and even the person of the laborite is turning into stark reactionism. In the face of the Indian Revolution, the socialist MacDonald will find no other methods but those with which Nicholas II opposed the Russian Revolution. Only a blind man could fail to see that Great Britain is headed for gigantic revolutionary earthquake shocks, in which the last fragments of her conservatism, her world domination, her present state machine will go down without a trace. MacDonald is preparing these shocks no less successfully than did Nicholas II in time, and no less blindly. So here too, as we see, is no poor illustration of the problem of the role of the free personality in history. But how could Russia, with her belated development, coming along the tail end of the European nations, with her meager economic foundation underfoot, how could she develop an elastic conservatism of social forms and develop it for the special benefit of professional liberalism and its leftward shadow, reformism, socialism? Russia was too far behind, and when world imperialism once threw her in its grip, she had to pass through her political history in too brief a course. If Nicholas had gone to meet liberalism and replaced one with Milyukov, the development of events will have different a little in form, not in substance. Indeed, it was just in this way that Louis behaved in the second stage of the revolution, summoning Gironde to power. This did not save Louis himself from guillotine. Not after him, the Gironde. The accumulating social contradictions were bound to break through the surface, breaking through to carry out their work of purgation. Before the pressure of the popular masses who had at last brought into the open arena their misfortunes, their pains, intentions, passions, hopes, illusions, and aims, the high-up combination, the monarchy with liberalism, had only an episodic significance. They could exert, to be sure, an influence on the order of events, maybe upon the number of actions, but not at all upon development of the drama nor its momentous climax. Chapter 7, 5 days, February 23 to 27, 1917. The 23rd of February was International Women's Day. The Social Democratic circles had intended to mark this day in a general manner by meetings, speeches, leaflets. It had not occurred to anyone that it might become the first day of the revolution. Not a single organization called for strikes on that day. What is more, even a Bolshevik organization and a most militant one, the Viborg Borough Committee, all workers was opposing strikes. Temper of the masses, according to Kayurov, one of the leaders in the workers' district, was very tense, and strike would threaten to turn into an open fight. But since the committee thought the time arrived for militant action, the party, not strong enough to end the workers, having too few contacts with the soldiers, they decided not to call for strike, but to prepare for revolutionary action at some indefinite time in the future. Such was the course followed by the committee on the eve of 23rd of February, and everyone seemed to accept it. On the following morning, however, in spite of all their directives, the women textile workers in several factories went on strike and sent delegates to the metal workers with an appeal for support. With reluctance, writes Kuyarov, the Bolsheviks agreed to this, and they were followed by the workers, Mensheviks, and social revolutionaries. But once there is a mass strike, one must call everybody into the streets and take the lead. Such was Kayurov's decision, and the Viborg committee had to agree to it. The idea of going into the street had long been ripening among the workers. Only at that moment nobody imagined where it would lead. Let us keep in mind this testimony of a participant, important for understanding the mechanics of the events. It was taken for granted that in case of a demonstration, the soldiers would be brought out into the streets against the workers. What will that lead to? This was wartime. The authorities were in no mood for joking. On the other hand, reserve soldiers in wartime is nothing like an old soldiers to of the regular army. Is he really so formidable? In revolutionary circles, they had discussed this much, but rather abstractly. For no one, positively, no one, we can assert this categorically upon this basis of all the data, they then thought that February 23 was to mark the beginning of a decisive drive against absolutism. The talk was of a demonstration which had indefinite, but in any case limited perspectives. Thus, the fact is that the February Revolution was begun from below, overcoming the resistance of its own revolutionary organizations, the initiative being taken for their own accord by the most oppressed and downtrodden part of the proletariat, the woman textile workers. Among them, no doubt, many soldiers' wives. The overground breadlines had provided the last stimulus. About 90,000 workers, men and women, were on strike that day. The fighting mood expressed itself in demonstrations, meetings, encounters with the police. The movement began in the Vybor district with its large industrial establishments. Thence, it crosses over to the Petersburg side. There were no strikes or demonstrations elsewhere, according to the testimony of the secret police. On that day, detachments of troops were called in to assist the police, evidently. Not many of them, but there were no encounters with them. A mass of women, not all of them workers, flocked to the municipal Duma demanding bread. It was like demanding milk for a he-goat. Red banners appeared in different parts of the city, and inscriptions on them showed that the workers wanted bread, but neither autocracy nor war. Women's Day passed successfully with enthusiasm and without victims, but what is concealed in itself, no one had guessed even by nightfall. On the following day, the movement not only fails to diminish, but doubles. About one half of the industrial workers of Petrograd are on strike on 24th of February. The workers come to the factories in the morning. Instead of going to work, they hold meetings and begin processions toward the center. New districts and new groups of the population are drawn into the movements. The slogan "bread" is crowded out or obscured by louder slogans. Down with autocracy, down with the war. Continuous demonstrations on the Nevsky First impact masses of workmen signing revolutionary songs. Later, a motley crowd of city folk interspersed with the blue caps of students. The promenading crowd was sympathetically disposed toward us, and soldiers in some of the war hospitals greeted us by waving whatever was at hand. How many clearly realized that was being ushered in by this sympathetic waving from sick soldiers to demonstrating workers. But the Cossacks constantly, though thought without ferocity, kept charging with the crowd. Their horses were covered with foam. The mass of demonstrators will part to left, then through, and close up again. There was no fear in the crowd. The Cossacks promised not to shoot, passed from mouth to mouth. Apparently, some of the workers had talks with individual Cossacks. Later, however, cursing, half-drunken dragons appeared to the scene. They plunged into the crowd, began to strike at heads with their lances. The demonstrators summoned all their strength and stood fast. They once should, and in fact they didn't.